Have you ever wondered what happens when an economy that seems absolutely unstoppable just stops? Well, that's the incredible story of Japan. It's a wild ride from the literal ashes of war to a global economic superpower and then decades of just stagnation. In this explainer, we're going to unpack that whole journey from the miracle to the malaise and see what lessons it holds for, well, for all of us.
To really get where Japan is today, we have to start with this one kind of shocking number, 248%. What is that? That's Japan's current debt to GDP ratio. Now, in simple terms, that means the country owes more than double what its entire economy produces in a single year. It is by far the highest of any major developed country, and it really sets the stage for the story of crisis.
And look, this goes way beyond just numbers on a spreadsheet. This quote really gets to the heart of it. We're talking about a really toxic cocktail of falling prices, that's called deflation, that massive rising debt, and a recent wave of over 10,000 companies going bankrupt in just 1 year. You can just imagine the pressure on ordinary people and businesses. It's immense.
So that brings us to the big question, right? How on earth did this happen? How did a country that was the absolute envy of the world, a true economic miracle, get so completely lost? That is the mystery we are going to solve together, step by step. To solve this mystery, we have to rewind the clock way back, because before the crisis, there was an honest-to-goodness miracle. Let's jump back to the post-war decades, a time when Japan's economy wasn't just recovering, it was exploding. It was all fueled by this obsessive focus on manufacturing, on quality, and an export strategy that was basically unbeatable.
I mean, the contrast between then and now is just jaw-dropping. In the 1980s, Japan was on top of the world. Its GDP was getting dangerously close to America's. 6 of the top 10 biggest companies on the entire planet were Japanese. And get this, people used to say that the land under the Imperial Palace in Tokyo was worth more than all of California. All of it. Fast forward to the day, and the picture could not be more different. The economy has actually shrunk, bankruptcies are a regular thing, and incomes have been flat since 1995.
So what was the turning point? What could possibly trigger such a dramatic reversal of fortune? Well, it wasn't some single internal mistake, not at first. It was an external shock, a single agreement that basically changed the rules of the entire global economic game overnight.
And this agreement was called the Plaza Accord. It was basically orchestrated by the United States, which was watching its own industries, like car manufacturing, just get crushed by Japanese competition. The goal was pretty simple: make Japanese stuff more expensive for Americans by making the Japanese yen way stronger compared to the dollar. For Japan's export machine economy, this was a direct, devastating threat. Just think about what that means for a second. A Toyota that was a fantastic bargain in America at $10,000 suddenly had to be sold for $20,000 just for the company to make the same amount of yen. Japan's biggest competitive advantage, amazing products at a great price, was just wiped out. Poof, gone. Overnight. Their whole economic model was suddenly in jeopardy. So, facing this existential threat, Japan's leaders had to do something. But their response, well, their response was a critical policy mistake. It didn't fix the real problem. Instead, it lit the fuse on one of the biggest, craziest speculative bubbles in modern history. So, how did this monster bubble even form? Well, it started with what seemed like a logical step. To get the economy moving, the Bank of Japan made borrowing money incredibly cheap. They cut interest rates in half, from 5% down to 2.5%. But here's the crucial part. Instead of using all that cheap money to innovate and make their products competitive again, businesses and ordinary people just poured it into stocks and real estate. This created an absolute frenzy, inflating a massive bubble that just took on a life of its own. Just look at this chart of the Nikkei stock index. It went from around 6,000 points to almost 39,000 in less than a decade. The returns were so insane that huge companies like Toyota were actually making more profit from playing the stock market than from, selling cars. Real business was being replaced by pure gambling. And as we all know, every bubble eventually has to burst. And when Japan's bubble popped, man, it didn't just cause a recession. It created this new, terrifying kind of economic sickness that would haunt the country for decades. So realizing they'd created a monster, the government slammed on the brakes, jacking interest rates up to 6%, and the market immediately crashed, wiping out trillions of dollars in wealth. The damage was so deep, so profound that it took the stock market a full 34 years until 2024 just to climb back to where it was in 1989. An entire generation of growth just gone.
But instead of letting the companies that made all these bad bets fail, which is what normally happens, Japan made another huge mistake. They propped them up. Banks gave these failing companies new loans, not to invest or to grow, but literally just to pay the interest on their old debt. These companies weren't really alive, but they weren't dead either. They became zombie companies.
And this wasn't a small problem. It was enormous. By the early 2000s, it's estimated that 30%, nearly a third, of all firms in Japan were zombies. Think about that. Almost a third of the entire economy was made up of companies that didn't innovate, didn't hire, and didn't grow. They were just there, sucking up all the money and resources that healthy new businesses needed. The human cost of all this was just catastrophic. It created what's now known as Japan's lost generation. Okay, put yourself in their shoes. You graduate from college in 1995. You're smart, you're full of ambition. But the bubble has burst, and companies just stop hiring for pretty much a decade. The corporate ladder you were supposed to climb has been pulled up, so you're forced to work part-time at a 7-Eleven just to get by. Now, fast forward to today. You're 50 years old, but you never got the chance to build a real career or develop those high-level skills. An entire generation's potential was just lost. So what can we take away from this whole cautionary tale? I mean, Japan's long, painful journey offers some really powerful and, frankly, scary lessons for any country in the world today. It really boils down to 3 big ones. First, the danger of putting your economy on life support. Propping up zombie companies feels like the kind thing to do, but it just leads to stagnation. Sometimes you need failure for new things to grow. Second, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Japan's total dependence on the US market made them incredibly vulnerable. And finally, a big population isn't automatically a good thing. If your people aren't equipped with the right skills for the modern economy, a huge population can actually become a burden, not a blessing. And that really brings us to our final and maybe most important thought. As we look around the world today with rising student debt, with huge skills gaps, with all this economic uncertainty, we have to ask ourselves, are the mistakes of Japan's past being repeated somewhere else? Are we, in our own ways, creating our own lost generations? It's a question we're thinking about.